This year marks the 70th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, and as part of our special coverage, we're bringing together stories from around the world. This one is from Peru, about a young woman who joined the French resistance. She later died at the hands of the Nazis. As CCTV's Dan Collyns reports, the story is now being made into a Hollywood film.
Her life began in a middle-class, devoutly Catholic family in the Peruvian capital of Lima at the turn of the 20th century. It ended 4 days before the end of the Second World War, as retreating German concentration camp guards, fleeing advancing Allied soldiers, forced prisoners on a death march. She was just 40 years old, but in her short life, she saved hundreds of lives.
Magdalena Truel was perhaps such an extraordinary person that she deserves not just one film, but several. Not just one book, but several books. And she deserves to be given more recognition by historians and world history in general.
Peruvian journalist Hugo Coya uncovered Magdalena's story when he researched his best-selling book about Peruvian victims of the Holocaust. She was one of the 23 portrayed in his book Estación Final. But that chapter was enough to bring Hollywood knocking. The shooting of the $50 million production is expected to begin in October in Paris, Lima, Los Angeles, and possibly Germany. Magdalena was the last of 8 children born to Alexandre and Marguerite Truel, both French, in the Peruvian capital in 1904. Her father was an importer of fine clothing from France, and Magdalena spoke both French and Spanish to perfection. She was proud to be Peruvian and fascinated by her country's history. Yet after her parents' deaths, the siblings fell on hard times and returned to France. This is the house where Magdalena Truel was born more than a century ago. But there's no plaque nor anything to indicate that this is the place where her extraordinary life began. Her heroic story is virtually unknown in Peru until now. At age 20, Magdalena went to study philosophy at the Sorbonne in the French capital. It was there she suffered a near-fatal accident when she was hit by a truck carrying German soldiers in wartime Paris and left with a permanent limp. As she recovered, she passed many hours in the doorway of her home, where she witnessed Nazi invaders abusing French citizens. The experience compelled her to join the French resistance.
Sus compañeros de la resistencia le dicen para que no se una a la resistencia. Her companions in the resistance told her not to join because of her physical limitations, but she convinced them that the Nazis would never suspect a disabled person of being a member of the resistance. From then on, Magdalena became the French resistance's best document forger, saving hundreds of lives, among them Jewish children, American and British paratroopers, and many members of the French resistance.
Pursued by the Nazi elite unit, the SS, Magdalena asked her family to promise to keep her secret for fear of reprisals. After many near captures, Magdalena was caught with a bottle of ink. She was horribly tortured, but never revealed anything to her Nazi captors. In June 1944, she was sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, just outside Berlin.
Yo debo reconocer de que I must admit that as I got to know her story, at times I was so moved that I wept as I unveiled the details of such a dramatic life so dedicated to others. The people I interviewed always spoke of her with respect and admiration, of a person totally devoted to others, and that is something unusual. The Second World War and wars in general bring out the worst and the best in human beings, and Magdalena Truel was one of the best things to redeem something as terrible as the Second World War.
Coya collected more stories of her acts of selflessness from her fellow prisoners up until her death in May 1945, as the Nazis beat a retreat. As he works as a producer on the film about Magdalena, Coya is also writing a book about her life.
There's almost a wave of sympathy and pride. In the case of Peruvians, it's really a point of pride that a woman born in Peru went to Europe to save the lives of other human beings.
The Forger, its working title, is expected to hit the big screen at the end of 2016. But perhaps just a few moviegoers will know that but for Coya's meticulous investigation, Magdalena's story might never have come to light. Dan Collyns, CCTV, Lima.